Rachel, congratulations on your book, A Soulful Marriage, Healing Your Relationship with Responsibility, Growth, Priority, and Purpose. I
Thank
understand from
you.
researching you that this book was like 10 years in the making.
Yes, it was. I had this yearning because after counseling sessions, there would be this magic that's happening that I couldn't even explain, but it was just happening among the three of us. And I just felt this yearning that more people, I wanted to reach more couples. And so I would pick it up and put it down and pick it up and put it down. And I have all these barriers. And then I just got a clear message that I need to just dive in and do it. And so that's when I did it.
So I just want to read something from your book
Okay.
that I really loved. You said, I often tell my clients that if I could influence the school curriculum for youth, I would mandate two essential life skills. One, starting as early as preschool to learn deep listening skills, which would be amazing and life changing for the whole planet. And
Mhm.
I'm adding that part. And two, from middle through college to receive incremental training in what it takes to build a lasting, loving relationship, starting with the most important person, yourself. And I love that you started with ourselves. The number one, you have four pillars in the book, which
Mhm.
I'd love for you to walk us through just generally. Obviously the
Mhm.
whole book covers it and people can pick up a copy. But you start with number one, which is responsibility. And I'd love for
Mhm.
you to just elaborate on that.
Sure.
Yeah.
On that one. Yes. So that one, it's very personal also to me, but it's the foundation of what we build with others is our relationship with ourselves. So that's the responsibility. And that includes making sure that you're happy and fulfilled and you are finding your own calling and your own fulfillment and you're working on your self love and you're growing as a person and taking good care of yourself and getting to know who you are and living authentically. And without that, it's really difficult to come with a solid footing on trying to bond with somebody else. And and I think it also is helps to mitigate the inclination for many people, including myself at the beginning of my own marriage, which is to think that my state is an effect of somebody else. So, like if I was happy, I was holding my husband too responsible for well, how I wanted to feel. And if he wasn't making me feel this way or that way, and then he also grew up believing that he was responsible for his wife's happiness. So we were kind of just going down a path that just made no sense. And then that's when we had some troubles. But it was a gift because that's when we started. That was the first lesson we learned together is that we're each responsible for our own happiness and well being. And that really started us off.
And I loved actually, it's interesting. You just talked about self love and authenticity as part of our responsibility to find that. Talk to us more about each of those, because I actually had that on my list of questions I wanted to
Mm,
ask you, because I think it's at the heart of, yes, of all of our relationships, not just with our partners, but obviously ourselves, our kids, how we show
mhm,
up in the world, and what we do ultimately attract to ourselves, and the synchronicities and all the
mhm,
things that we, when we're more in alignment. But I think sometimes it's hard, especially for women who find themselves often in roles of people pleasing and
mhm,
thinking about and feeling like making sacrifices is somehow
mm,
the path versus, you know, taking care of themselves and feel and realizing that it's actually okay to be self-focused and to start with themselves. So can we
mhm,
talk about both? Because I'd love your definitions of self-love and authenticity and how somebody unhooks, because it may be patterns of like decades of
mm,
really just focusing, like, you said your husband thought his job was to make his partner, you happy, his wife
mhm.
happy. I think a lot of women are out there thinking that their job is to serve everyone around them, even in their work,
Absolutely.
even in their
Yes.
work. They're always last,
Hmm.
generally speaking. Women
Yes.
put
Yeah. There
themselves
are
last.
exceptions, but that's
There are
it's a definite
exceptions.
trend. Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yes.
So I see self love. I chose self love over self esteem because it really is about honoring who you are with all that you are, with your mistakes and your favorable things and everything. Just really having an orientation of care. it's really self-care, but self-care means typically taking care of your body and your mind, and and that's how I describe it. But it's really that you turn toward yourself with the same love and care and compassion that you would to the person you hold most dear, that you
Yes.
are find so easy just to love, and you just want them to be happy. And so self-love is that that's it's a visceral experience to really feel open-hearted and caring toward yourself. And then from there, it tames some of the harshness that we put upon ourselves, that then translates into then how sensitive we are to how other people respond to us.
Yes.
And so if we're really feeling like good in our own skin or loved in a cushion of that, then it helps us to be more resilient when things don't go our way, or when somebody, inadvertently or directly says something hurtful or rejects us or whatever. So the self-love, we are lighter when we are self-loving. Often it's underneath, like I don't know anyone that it's if you trace it down and ladder down into what's really going on, is they don't feel they're worthy, they don't feel like they're enough. And so to really work on that, and it takes, I mean, I'm 60 years old and I constantly have to meditate on that. And it does get better. You can get better at it. And I think the authenticity is so tied in with that, because if you feel really okay and honoring yourself, then you're less afraid of what might happen if you become real and authentic. And I just the other day, my Kabbalah teacher I was asking her advice on this, and because I was finding myself getting too involved in too many things, because I'm a creative person and I love hosting and I love writing and I love seeing clients, and but I can do it at the expense of, I need time to rest and my cortisol to lower.
Yeah.
And so she had me go through these steps, and similar things are in the book, but where you just pause and ask, like, what's your why? Am I doing this because I think I'm expected to do it? And those are questions. Or is it really that I feel called to do it? Is this, even though I could, is there another way I could do a version of it that's a little bit more modified, that would honor myself better? And that's how I see the path to authenticity, is slowing down and getting quiet and listening to that voice inside, and to know why. That's where the self-awareness comes into, like, really know why, what's motivating me here. Is it because, and at this in this case, I'd been feeling guilty if I didn't host this event for this person, because I felt like nobody else would do it and she should have this. And in the end, it was an amazing thing, and I'm glad I did. But it's more about the relationship with myself that I want to keep cultivating, so that I can live authentically.
Absolutely. And also, based on what I read in your book, too, it's also what helps us show up and have our needs met in our relationships, and also to be seen and valued in the way that we deserve, right?
Yes, exactly. And the key is that we want to, I was just actually taking a class right before this, spiritual class, that we want to get to the place where we see that our desire is to receive, but it's for the sake of sharing, but not to bypass the self and just go straight to sharing it without
Yes.
first, like, we need to fill up and we need to receive and have a big desire to receive. And then what makes it so that it becomes unlimited and really sings for us and doesn't come to dead ends is when we, kind of think bigger about it. It's like, I want this because I want to take care of myself, because I know then I'm a better person to show up for others when I'm really happy and relaxed, and I get better insights and, messages and things. So it is good to always have sharing in mind, but not where you just grind yourself and forget that
Yes.
you're in a body, and that you're a channel for that. So you have to take care of that, of yourself.
Yes. And sometimes that becomes a permission slip for women, knowing that ultimately it does serve the people around them. Then they realize that taking care of themselves, even if that's maybe not the best way in,
I
it
know,
still
I
works.
know.
Right. And so it helps, I think, sometimes women to realize,
Yes.
like, okay, actually, if I take care of myself, I will be the better partner,
Yes.
parent, friend, daughter, whatever it would
Yeah.
be.
And I've
Yes,
also worked on, just a real quick side note
please.
about that, is to also really see that I am, you know, it's kind of paradoxical. Is it is good to think about, because we receive more when we do give, if it's in the right way, if it's not out of, like, guilt, if it's not out of the expense of our health, or our well-being. But I've also tried to grow to see that I am worthy and loved, and that it's good for me to do for myself because it will bring me joy in and of
Yes.
itself.
Yes.
Um,
But that's when you're
Also,
being your own best friend. You're like, yes,
yeah,
I would do this
yeah.
for my friends. So you know what? I'll do it for me. Or I would make a nice breakfast for my child. So why don't I nourish
Oh,
myself? Right?
so good. Yeah,
Right? Yeah.
yeah.
Where did you come up with a soulful marriage? Because I do feel like spirituality, the soul is a
Hmm.
big part of your book, but tell us about the
Yes,
title.
yes. Well, I had started with it as the four pillars just because I didn't know what else to call it because it's really the crux of it are these four foundational pillars. But the actually the publisher, the CEO of the publishing company, like that stood out to her when she was reading the book. But I loved it instantly because it represents the it has so much reference to connecting with your own soul and how you want to connect to your partner soul to soul. And people can have different interpretations of what a soulful experience is for them, but it usually engenders a sense that it's going to be deep and rich and warm and loving and going to have potential for more than just what meets the eye.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Will you walk us through just what the four pillars are? Just the generally? Yes.
yes. So the first one we've talked about, which is where each is responsibility. We're responsible for our own happiness and well-being. And that includes self awareness, self love, self care, and self examination or self development. And that also includes like taking care of your mental health and things like that. And then the second one is growth. And really, at the core of that is where people are usually coming to therapy because it's where the friction is. It's
Yeah.
where, and so the consciousness with the second pillar is that we use our friction to grow individually and closer together. So there's a welcoming of the friction, a reframing that it's actually fulfilling our purpose of being together, which is to become closer to who we're capable of becoming. And how else can we do that unless we're, not bumping up against one another? We're not in some form of opposition. But the key is how you approach the conflict is going to make all the difference. It's not just to, fight like cats and dogs and never get anywhere, but and then the third is priority, and that's my husband's pillar. I had originally had three, and doing a workshop on this, and then he said, "I love these, but there's one missing." And so, priority is where you make each partner makes their partner the most important other person in their life, and in a way that they know that they are just cherished and you got their back. There's nothing that's gonna, come between you. And my husband felt that was important because I was really focused on the kids. And I shifted that, and he felt such a difference when I brought my priority stronger back with him, kind of halfway through their upbringing. Um, and then the fourth is purpose. And that's where we make the world better through our bond. It's thinking bigger. It's going past you. There is purpose in raising your family and in your collective, your community, but this is about how you tap into an even bigger reservoir of blessings by using what you have to affect people in a larger way that you may never even meet, but you just can see what happens when you support each other in your individual purposes, and then also how you might be able to put your time and your talent and your treasures together to add value
I
to
love
the
it.
world.
I love them all, and I loved the fourth one. I've never heard anyone really talk about that as it relates to relationships. It was
Hmm.
very unique, and I loved it because it connects us to our humanity and being of service and our oneness and our connectedness. And it's why are we here if not for that? But the idea of doing that in partnership, I thought was really beautiful.
Yeah.
So thank you for that, because like I said, I've never heard that. Um, I I'm curious because you're writing the book. There's a lot of common themes. So what are the common themes for why people show up in therapy? Um, and also, I'm curious if you see anything in midlife where people have, maybe are empty nesters or, if they've been together for a while,
Hmm.
if
Hmm.
there's anything special that maybe shows up there. as a
Hmm.
result of that.
Well, I'll tell you, they don't come in because they think they need more purpose. People don't even realize that that's something that they need. And that's where my husband and I learned that through studying the wisdom of Kabbalah. It was like a
Mm,
direct, it just started to change our relationship because to be less myopic about what we're going to get from each other. And we faced more out into the world. And then it really helped. It was like made it more spacious and, and generous. And so that one, people don't realize that's even a thing. You know, it's like I
right.
call one of the best kept secret. And so most couples come in. I would say that the number one is because they are having trouble with whatever disconnections they have, or fighting that they're having, or areas that they're unhappy, and they're not getting anywhere. They're
Mm,
not able to resolve it or find even a good way to communicate. So often communication is the first thing I help them with, is because they say we
yes.
just don't communicate. We are terrible at communicating, and usually that just means that they just each are accusatory, and then they get defensive, and then nothing gets resolved. So there's a lot of training on how to listen and how to take turns. And the book, I call it Love Seat Listening Method, where you just really make sure you feel you're really grasping the other person. And then I see a group of people that are empty nest age or approaching empty nest. And some of them end up going their own ways, that they were really kind of hanging in there for the sake of the kids and for different reasons. And then when, it wasn't their goal to say, then we're ending it, but then they just start to re-put their own individual happiness more the focus, and what's my next chapter. And so some decide that it's not work, good going to be. They don't see the growth potential, but
Yes.
most come, and women who have, this is just being generalizing, but it is what I see a lot, that where women have focused almost exclusively on rearing the kids, they have the harder time with the emptiness stage.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is like nothing's changed for their partner, who's just as engaged, and they're needing something more from the relationship, and that's been kind of covered over by raising the kids. And also they themselves are needing to adjust to the transition and find themselves in a whole new way. And so that I find really ricochets onto the marriage. And some of it is valid for the relationship itself, but some of it is displaced
Mm.
because of one's own need to really feel like you have purpose again.
Yeah, because the kids absolutely can fill that need for a long
Yeah.
time. Yeah,
Yeah.
they because the kids do need you. And I
Hmm.
did think that that pillar on prioritizing each other was interesting because I remember thinking pretty much everyone I know was like how you said you were in the first part of the marriage, which was prioritizing the
Yeah.
kids. And
Absolutely.
I would say probably my husband and I do too. It's not that we don't love each other. It's probably I think
Hmm.
we're 23 years together,
Wow.
married whatever, five less than that. But to get, I just consider it all the same. The
Yeah.
union is the union, whether we were officially married or not. But I think it's very easy to prioritize the kids.
Hmm.
And so, how does one even approach making that shift? Because it, for some of us, it just feels like not the norm or something, or like not natural. That's the word.
Yeah. No, it's just, and especially we've become more child centered over the decades.
Yes.
Mhm. And
True,
women
true.
and women have more influence over how things are run in the house. And so it's the woman usually
Yeah.
who wants to make sure that the focus is enough on the kids. And so,
Yeah.
I mean, my husband just said he just trusted me and thought that's what we should do, which it was fine on some level, but it's really more micro shifts that we can make. It doesn't mean that you don't really be there for the children. It's just not, it can sound like you're neglecting them, and it's not that.
Yeah.
But there are plenty of openings um, inside yourself, first of all, and in momentary interactions where I just know I can dismiss my husband when the kids are right there. I still do it. They're adults and have one has a child of their own, but to be conscious
Yeah.
that this is who came first, and this is who's going to be there, and so the how is the little things
Yes.
like I don't know, how do you nurture your how do you help your husband feel like your relationship is important and he's important?
Well, we're both entrepreneurs, and so
Hmm.
I fully support him in his purpose and his work.
Hmm.
Always have, because I'm a hard worker. I value it's a value of mine. So to
Hmm.
me, like he knows, like, and he knows I have his back. He just knows that. Like I've always been that person who has his back. But I did say to him, I said, and I even said to my daughter, I said, Dad and I are going to start taking more date nights or having more dates. I mean, she's 16 now, but
Hmm.
I don't think
Hmm.
it's ever too late because also part of me thinks, what is it going to be like when she's out of the house?
Yeah,
Like,
that's right.
I don't want to find my way, like,
Hmm.
try to connect things. I want to know what it's like now. Not that we're not connected, but you can
Hmm.
prioritize your work and things that you love, including your child. So anyway, that's so it's like just
That's
trying to
great.
maybe
I love
integrate
it.
some more time that's just the
Hmm.
two of us.
Yeah, and that isn't going to affect the sense of value that your daughter feels that you are to them. In fact, she probably likes it. I know. We told the kids the same a little bit younger, that they didn't like us leaving, but we taught them young that this is really good for us to be your parents to be really close and connected, and
Yeah.
we're better parents, we're happier, and this is just really good. So we didn't like fall into the guilt when they were upset we were leaving, or and we didn't leave tons, like I still was
Yeah.
pretty mom centered. I'm a Cancerian by nature, so like I'm very nurturing, but it's little things like if you're talking with your husband and your child comes up, do you let yourself get interrupted, or you just say hold on to and hold your hand up and say just a second, we're having a conversation. Those little things like or going ahead and taking that date night, or maybe you don't go to every single event that they have because you've got something special you want to do. Most of them you would go to for your child, but maybe one you miss because we have something special we are going to do, or just little things like that. And I love to hear that you're doing it before empty nesting, because when people ask me, how do I, how do we, I want, they want me to come talk about empty nest relationship. And I'd say, well, I'd love to talk with people right before, like younger, because you really want to prepare for it.
Totally. Totally.
And hmm.
So what are you seeing? And actually, I will say we did when my daughter was younger, I feel like we used to have like a Friday date night. And then we moved here, you get out of a routine, but we used to have
Yep.
Broadway and Boston tickets and we would go once a
Nice.
month at least to that. But it's easy to have shift. And then he started his company. We moved like life circumstances can shift even if you are trying to make your partner
Exactly.
more of a priority. So
Exactly.
it's an effort to put into it. But are you
Hmm.
seeing anything with empty nesters specifically, specific challenges?
Um, Well, many of them are excited, like that we get to. I know my husband and I have enjoyed the empty nest, but we had some bumps to try to figure out how we spend our time, and because it was filled so much with the kids. Um, but then, and then some. Really, it's those that don't feel very connected to their partner, the emotional connection on the marriage wheel. They're feeling like close emotional friends. If they don't have that, then it can feel very lonely, and then they're just sort of in a um and like what am I going to do, like how are we going to really go forward. That's what I'm just thinking of people that I'm meeting with currently, and
Yeah.
both of them it was the emotional connection that they didn't have, and some of them it's the work life balance that they aren't in line. Like it's beautiful that you two are both entrepreneurs and you get it. It's like it's not a area that you struggle together. You just really both have that desire and you both support each other in it. But not everyone has the same kinds of desires. And there's nothing wrong with that. But it gets harder to navigate when one has a desire to keep really engaging and creating and working, and the other wants to maybe travel or wants more attention from their partner
Yes.
and wants them to be more present. I've also seen where some, have a different idea of how much time to spend with the grandchildren. Like they want their life to be centered around that, and another one the man in this case wanted to have it be our chapter. Or yes, we have the grandchildren, but we still have our own trips and we have our own life together. So couples have to navigate, especially if they don't have the same idea of that life stage. They need to navigate how they're going to do that.
And do they hear each other better in therapy, do you find?
Hmm.
That's why
They do.
they've showed up, right? Because they're
Well,
not, yeah.
yeah. It's two things. It's the what is the disconnection they're feeling, and then the how are they talking about it, and they need help usually with both.
I see.
Yeah. So they're stuck with like, what are we going to do with not feeling connected? And so they don't know where to turn. And I'm so glad that they have reached out. And then they also, usually use a lot more blaming language. We're just wired. Our egos most of us have ego conversations, which is like,
Protection, right?
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And they're scared, get scared. Our needs aren't going to get met. And so we can, really point fingers and it can happen in one little tone, that there's this exaggeration of how much golf they play or it just it can set up for so much defensive. So in my office, I can get very structured with them, and I try to lay it out as specifically as I could in a chapter in the book on how to really take turns being the speaker and the listener, and how to learn how to normalize and reflect back what you're hearing. It's very counterintuitive, but you can get better at it over time.
Yeah. You wrote something in the book that I thought was interesting that basically you write that fighting is an ideal, but it's better than not communicating, not
Hmm.
speaking. Like this whole idea of stonewalling, which some people will do, where they'll
Hmm.
just literally just, that seems cruel actually, just like
Oh,
ignore the
absolutely.
other partner.
Yeah.
And so let's talk a little bit about that. So fighting, but not tirades. You also
Yeah,
make that
exactly.
distinction too. Talk
Yeah.
to us about, because communicating sometimes, I think people have this idea that like there shouldn't be any arguing. That's not realistic
No.
either. And not maybe
It's not
healthy.
only
Yeah.
not realistic, but it's also not helpful for what marriage can or a long-term relationship can become, which is to really help each other grow. And you build trust by disconnecting and reconnecting and working through something that you didn't think you could. And wow, you got to the other side, and that builds confidence in what you've shared and what you have together. And even just week 2 weeks ago, my husband and I had a difficult Sunday, but we've learned enough to lean into it, to know that there's some growth trying to reveal itself here. And when we really did sit down, we're so much closer after we had the difficulty. So the fighting is, it's about not wanting to go to the extremes where you never address issues and never bring up what's bothering you.
Yeah.
I'm working with a couple right now that she just kept it all in, and she's just leaving.
Mm.
There's, he's dumbfounded, but it's like because all that was kept in. And it's not her fault. It's just how she operates, and
Yeah.
he had
Yeah.
done some things that were really harmful early on, and they never worked it through. And then it just is,
Compounds.
it compounds. And so, even if it's going to get, down and dirty, you're still better to get things out because it also shows you care. You haven't checked out completely.
Yeah.
And then, but too much conflict makes it so that people don't want to come home at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And then I'd like to get to a place like my husband and I worked toward, and I try to help other people do this, where they feel like we can talk about anything. There isn't anything that we can't talk about. And that's what, you want to get to a place where even if it's a really difficult topic, you can bring it up, and you know that even if it gets a little messy and heated, that you'll gather yourselves and you will ultimately really be heard and understood, and then you'll work it through together to see how you can find, common ground or what you're going to do from there.
Yeah. What about, and I've seen this before with friends or whatever, where the partners feel like roommates.
Hmm.
So how do they bridge the communication, that connection? How do they
Mm,
re-spark some of that? Because,
that is such a good question. I was thinking about that in some sessions today with people. Um,
yeah,
it's very common, even if you're not having terrible issues, that there becomes this like too comfortable feeling, and you don't see your partner as this sultry, sexy, entity or person. And so, first of all, I recommend to not let it go too long, because the longer you aren't sexual, then it gets more foreign, that it feels strange if you wait too long. So that means that, like, yeah, if you're going through something for whatever reason, health, or you feel like you're having some troubles in the relationship and you don't feel comfortable with that, yeah, you need to honor yourself. But I would really get help to like take the steps to start reintroducing that into your relationship sooner versus later.
yeah,
It's just what I've seen. It's just a lot harder when years pass, and it just, the walls just get thicker and thicker.
Yeah.
And then the other is to really decide to be intimate, not just because you're waiting to feel the desire, but because your mind knows that it's good for us, and that it's a desire you have proactively to nourish that kind of communication that you have together. It's a special thing only between us, and it's a desire that I want to share love, and I want to try to slow down and open up my body, because that also can happen where it's just really hard to do something for its own sake when we get so task oriented. And it's just kind of like a portal in time where you just let go of everything and you just enjoy the experience. And so we get lazy, for that too. So I just think it's important to not judge your relationship or judge yourself or think it's a bad sign for whoever is feeling in the relationship, perhaps that they have a wall or a barrier,
Hmm.
and get to know that wall and what it takes for you to get over it, and together or on your own. And then also just normalize that it's okay if it's not like the most ideal experience or perfect or super erotic, or but just that it's a nice warm experience. And then the more you do it, the more comfortable you can get for it to be rebuilt. And such an important part of our relationship. And the less we do it, sometimes the more unfamiliar it becomes. And but each couple needs to decide what works for them, the rhythm of frequency. I'm not like I don't have certain criteria of what I think couples should do. It's totally, each person needs to decide that.
Yeah. In the book, you share quite a few different stories where there's been infidelities, and you say people have come back stronger from that.
Mm-hmm.
Some
Mm-hmm.
don't.
Mm-hmm.
But I actually found that interesting. I guess, to me, like that kind of a betrayal, personally, I don't think I could come back from that. But
Mm-hmm.
what is the work around that? I mean, it's because it was interesting because a couple of the guys you mentioned, they loved their wives.
They do. I
They like
know.
love their wives. So it's like, what's going
Yep.
on? So talk to us
Yep.
about this. Because I mean, obviously relationships are complex and everybody's, we're
Yes.
going through our dance with our partners. But
Yeah.
I thought that was really interesting. I was like, wow, this guy loves his wife that much. And yet this happened. Like one
Mm-hmm.
of them was like on autopilot that you talk
Yep.
about.
Yep. And I knew, and that's what I had in mind too. Um, and all of these stories that are in the book are so disguised,
Of
people wouldn't be able to
course.
say who
Of
they are, but
course.
they're like a
Yes, yes.
amalgamation of different
Of
things put together.
course.
But I
Yeah.
have certain people that come to mind when I think about those stories for sure. But I think when you said our relationships are so complex, we are complex.
Yes.
So we can be in many different places at the same time. We can really disassociate, really, and love our partner, but are struggling with some feelings we have, and we don't know how to address them. There's a lot of us that are still, we're all still growing up. We're trying to mature, and emotional maturity. That's why I said in the beginning of the book, I wish we were trained in listening skills and what it takes to build a relationship, starting with yourself, because we don't have the self-awareness. We don't know how to articulate, I'm starting to feel empty, or I feel lonely, and I don't, there's just, we just like look at how our parents did it and think, well, I just, these, a couple of men in particular I'm thinking of, they just go to work and they just feel like they have to provide. If their needs aren't being met, they don't feel like they can say anything. And so they don't know, they don't see a way out. And then all of a sudden they're vulnerable to it and they don't even realize it. And then somebody who they don't even care about, but makes them feel good about themselves. And then they can't resist. And it's like a drug. And
Mm.
like good people, like these are like, it's the brain. It
That's what
happens.
they sounded like the way you
Yeah.
just I was like, this
No,
sounds
no,
like
that
a good
most of them are
person.
good. Honestly,
Yeah.
like it's
Yeah.
rare that it's somebody who, I believe most everybody, there's some that, truly are just pure evil, but everybody has good and bad, and like
Yeah.
if they're
Yeah.
doing something bad, it's because there's something that is off about them, that they aren't. But nonetheless, there are some that aren't able to really be loyal. But most of the cases I've seen, it's that didn't know how, people didn't know how to handle how they felt and what they felt missing inside themselves or in the relationship. And so eventually a relationship stops giving you that high. And you have to, that's why the relationship with self is so important, because you need to be able to weather the times when your needs aren't being met without doing something reactive, and turning inward with, okay, what, I and being able to regulate one's emotions to withstand the emptiness that can come. But, you know, different stages of life, some people, everybody's developing. And so when we're at a stage where we don't know how to handle those strong emotions and needs, then people do all sorts of things. They shop too much, or they'll, you know, I mean, even the porn. Like I've grown to unlearn this from like through the inside experiences of what it's been like for clients who turn to things, whether it's addiction to alcohol or porn or shopping or the phone or you know, another woman or golf, whatever, you know, like
What's at the
something.
heart of all that, though, Rachel? Is it a need to what?
Um,
Get a
I
high? Get that, like you were
yeah,
saying? It is. It's to
yes,
get a hit, like that
to get a
sense
hit
of
exactly.
to feel a
Is
little alive, excited, something.
exactly. And everyone's
Wow.
neurology is different too. Some
I
people
got it.
have a neurology, their impulse control is not as tame, you know,
Yeah.
or they you know, really need touch. And they often pick people who are as touchy feely. It happens a lot, you know, like, and so they don't know how to, you know, how to deal with the insecurity that creates or the
Oh,
emptiness
wow.
that creates. And it's really not knowing how to deal with what in internal family systems, which is a kind of therapy. It's called, I don't know if you're familiar with that. I figured you
Yeah.
might be. That's why I
Yeah.
said
Well,
it.
in my early 20s, I found a therapist who was trained in IFS.
It's so
And
good,
that,
isn't
yeah,
it?
it's really good. Yeah. Can you explain what it is for women who are
Yeah.
hearing
So
that term?
internal family systems, I used to call it inner child. Like, you know, when I first started
Yeah.
doing this work, it was inner child work, but it's really understanding that we're made up of many different parts of us. And we have parts of us that are our true self, our core self, which is calm and confident and has perspective and trusts and loves to love others and love oneself. And then we have exiled parts of us, which are the feelings, the emotions that are we're wired to just not want to feel, like emptiness or terror
Mm,
or helplessness
yeah.
or shame. And so when we don't know, those are like the more raw parts of who we are. Usually there's like a child in us that has, you know, that can connect with.
Yeah.
And then when we don't know how to take care of those parts of us, we have these protector parts. And protector parts come in two forms. They're either about control, and that's like the perfectionism or overachieving or OCDing, you know, or whatever. And then we have the distractor protector parts. And so these affairs are really a distraction. They're where you can't be with the emptiness, and you don't want to leave your marriage and your home, and you feel trapped. And so you just kind of justify that. It's happens kind of it's conscious but unconscious. It's like
Yeah.
it's
Autopilot. They just
yeah,
go
it
on
becomes
some.
like a protector part kicks in that says, I'll take you away from this pain. Just come with me.
Mm,
And that I'll, you know, like I'll distract you with gambling, or let's go do something. I'm going to get that
could be
right.
food
Or,
for some, for,
oh, 100% could be food. Some people cut, some people, I mean, all these things that like make it so that you just don't have to be in your body the way you were before because you can't tolerate this emotional pain. So a lot of the healing journey, the affair is really just the result. It's not it becomes its own problem that you have to heal.
that's a
It's very
huge one. But yeah.
multifaceted. It is
Yeah.
huge. It is.
Yeah.
It's really complex. And but I've seen it again and again where people who never thought they could get past it, and people who never thought they would ever do it. And but you can. And then if it's used for the sake of growth, and I have a model in the book, like a triangular, like three-prong model where you have to take full accountability and you have to be committed, and it means many different things to be committed, especially your own growth and really learning why you did this and what will stop you from doing this in the future. What needs to
Totally.
change fundamentally with how you relate with yourself and your relationship,
Mm.
so that you have checks and balances that you're not going to get in that same position. And then, you know, like that's where like example of internal family systems, that's where we start to dig in, that people who have affairs are taking it into their own hands, haven't asked for help with what they're dealing with.
Mm.
So then we're kind of going backwards after the mess is made, and it's one of those painful things I see. It's excruciating,
Mm.
especially to the one who's been betrayed, but it's also
Of
really
course.
excruciating to the one who has betrayed. And then it's really kind of slowing down and really, you know, what builds really trust again is that person is going to be not the same person who did that. they're going to really have a whole different level of self-awareness, and they're going to operate differently, so that you can trust that same blindness isn't going to take over them.
Yeah. And at the heart of all of this is the deep listening and the communication because, and both partners being willing to engage in that,
Yeah, exactly.
right? Whether
Exactly.
it's with a therapist or at least in their homes.
Yes. I do find, and maybe I'm clearly biased because I am a therapist, but I always prefer that people get help with it because you're holding so much at the same time. And especially the person who's betrayed can make so many mistakes, and how you handle it right at the get go, it makes all the difference in how the repair can go underway.
Yeah.
And, so I really do a lot of coaching
Yeah.
for that one. And because they really can't get their needs met for a while, like they're not in the focus, but eventually they also need to share what's been bothering them, but not
Yes.
initially.
Yes, for sure. I would say with a betrayal, but I guess I was thinking in general, like it seems like at the heart of all of these
Oh, I
things,
see.
right? I mean, is the deep listening and being willing to
Hmm.
both be in it, like a commitment to work on
Yes.
it, whatever the it
Yes.
is,
Exactly. And
right?
like I have
Yeah.
like in the book, like a wheel, a marriage wheel.
Yeah.
And the wheel has the 8 different friendships that are within a relationship that I see in modern times. And the tire around it, there's a tire and a hub. And both of them you just said. The tire is communication.
Yes.
And so without listening well and really having a methodology and tools that you can work through anything, you can't take care of these spokes of your where you have problems in your wheel. If you don't have a way to communicate about it, you're just stuck with a limping wheel.
Right.
And then you also need the hub, which is desire. You need to have desire to grow, desire for the relationship, desire for life. And, not everybody's in the same desire level, but to the extent that you have enough commonality and desire, and that's commitment.
Yeah.
And then that kind of, you can't go without that. You can't get anywhere if you also don't have the commitment and the desire.
Is there anything you can share with my listeners today? Just a communication technique that tends to
Mm.
get people seeing each other? Anything, not to oversimplify it. I mean, we've got this beautiful book you've written,
Oh, no, that's
but
fine. No,
yeah,
I'm
just,
happy to share it.
yeah, I'd
Yeah.
love to give tangible things that people can start playing with.
Absolutely. No.
Yeah.
And it's a good exercise to narrow it down into a few steps. In fact, I just wrote an article for Psychology Today on like these 4 steps. But the first thing is that it's important to not engage when you're activated, when you're in those out of your window of tolerance in terms of your nervous system and emotionally, and your ego is taking over, and all you see is disgust, and all you see is how wrong they are, and how in pain you are over something that you just feel. And really pause, but not like a storming off, but a pause that is intentional, that is for the sake of we're both reactive and we want this to go well. So I'd like to come back when we're calmer and really use this to enhance our connection ultimately and grow individually. Let's see what we can do with this once we get calmer. And then you can like go journal or do something else, organize your closet, take a shower, really try to do something that your different part of your brain is involved, because it's
Mm,
the right amygdala that's so emotional, and you don't want to
mm,
come with that lower level thinking system. You want to come, Daniel Kahneman talks about 2 thinking systems, and you want to come with, your system 2 that is more has more perspective. So that calming down is really important. And then when you come back together, then a tool is to really take turns. And we tend to cut each other off and give our defense, our explanation, our description, our clarification while the other is talking.
mm.
And maybe even get like a timer. This is a new idea just right now. Like maybe get one of those timers, and a long one, so that someone really has the chance to get just to share what their perspective is,
Yeah.
and then switch. But when the other person's sharing and you're the one listening, that's the listening, partner, then to really just make sure that you heard them. Like, am I getting this right? So you feel da 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 da, and da da da. You don't have to agree with them, but so from your perspective, you're dealing with this day and you're wondering, why am I doing this or whatever. And then once people feel heard, they don't know the difference. We don't know the difference between feeling heard and feeling loved. And then it calms our nervous system. And then we're more
Mm.
open to self examine. Well, I think I'm really being too irritable today, or, like it just starts to calm things down. But it's hard. It's really hard. I do this professionally. I've been with my husband 38 years. And just 2 weeks ago, we didn't get to, we laughed later. Like we weren't talking until 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Sunday because we just really triggered each other. We were in the same house and we just kept checking in. Not yet, not yet. We just weren't ready. But we knew we would get to it. So, we weren't stonewalling. We weren't just like, it's really abusive to just
Ignore
refuse
somebody.
to talk to someone.
It's
Yeah.
mean. Yeah. I think
It's
it's
me.
really cruel. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to pause, set the timer, connect
Mhm. When you're calmer. Uh-huh.
when you're calmer. Does
Uh-huh.
it matter where you're doing this? Like, I feel like,
Mm.
maybe not the bedroom, maybe, I don't know. Does it matter
Such a
what
good
room you're in?
question.
I just was
Yeah.
curious. I was trying to visualize, like, where would you be, and if you've got the kids,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes that limits where you can
It
privately
does.
speak. Yes.
It does.
Yeah.
Well, it's recommended, excuse me, not late at night, not past 8 o'clock. Generally, more fights statistically happen, where we've lost our willpower by the
We're
end
just
of.
tired. We can't regulate anymore. Yeah.
Exactly.
Literally, you
And
just
then, I
can't.
mean, outside is really good because you
Yeah.
want to be in a place that's spacious because it feels really confining and closes in on us when we have conflict. And we need something to help us feel more expansive and more open. So I know for my husband and I, we happened to pick the biggest room in the house. We didn't think about it, but it just felt better just to have more space.
Because I was sort of visualizing that. I feel like you would want that. There's something about like the smaller the room, the more everything feels like bigger or something.
Yeah, yeah. That's just been my experience, and
Yeah.
and being outside is spiritually. We learned from this one sage called the Ari through my studies of Kabbalah that you want to, as in the morning, you want to open your blinds, you want to look outside, you want to look at the sky a lot because you think bigger. You see how vast your consciousness is, you see how vast life is, and you see yourself in a bigger way. And your issues and your problems become smaller, to look.
It's
I mean, we all do that when
beautiful.
we go for a walk try to look at the sky, so bigger spaces are better. And, it is good to have eye contact because you remember because the soul comes through the eyes. So you're looking at each other soul to soul. And it's sort of softening. I do that with couples on the couch. I'm looking over at my couch right there where they are they're sitting like this over, and when the time is right, I try to, have them talk to each other and I invite them to turn and sit a little bit knee to knee and face to face. And you see their body changes, their tone changes because you remember this is a human being. This is who I love and it's intimate. And so it can soften. So, it's the opposite of like road rage where you can't see anyone. So people go, you want to bring the humanness and the oneness in. And so that can help. And if you're not feeling heard, then just try to be calm and say, there's still some things that I want to make sure you hear me. So can you just share with me what you're getting so far? If it's really hard to use these skills, like I was saying, like even I who train people in it, I lead my husband and I in it, but they can go out the window and
Sure. You're human.
yeah, exactly. So but
Uh,
practice is good. Like, just getting, and sometimes it becomes part of you where you're not doing it so structured. I'm in favor of structure though, because it tames that ego voice. But with time, you start to blend it into more day to day talking where you just can share, where you can reflect back what they heard. Oh, I understand that makes sense why you would feel that way. And then you
that's
want
a
to,
nice thing. That's a gift to your partner right there. Being able
mhm,
to write, to validate.
validate, normalize. Absolutely. And then I
Yeah.
like to also, empathy's extra credit, if you really can show how it feels like. And then I think it's important to not problem solve right away and first just make sure that you're each heard, but then eventually get to a place if you feel ready for it to see, you can ask each other, what is it like, what's one small thing I can do that you think would help you get more of what you need in this situation?
Yeah.
And we kind of like to have something concrete of a takeaway that we're not just swimming in, we're stuck, but okay, this is something of an action I can do.
Just talk to us before we wrap up today, Rachel, about this idea of soulmates and what that really means to you.
Yeah, good question. So, and this I learned again from studying the wisdom of Kabbalah that, it does matter who we pick. Like it is important to have someone in your life who you love being near, that you like looking into their eyes in particular. And that you also know that you can grow with them, that you think you can see yourself growing. And to me, that's really enough. That's like soulmate right there. Like if you're a mate that you can nourish each other's souls, and it's not about like finding the one. It could be the case, it could be, but it doesn't. It's more, are you evolving? Is this a person that you can keep evolving? And you create a soulmate relationship. It's not
Mm.
like a noun of a person. It's more of a process. It's a sanctuary, as I like to see it, that you create together, where you show up and you commit to evolving as a person in the relationship, and you become a soulful mate. And then you help your partner as you are also asking for what you need. You're also keeping in mind that I'm here to help him or her or they grow, so that they can. So how can I approach this conflict we're having, not only so that I get what I need or that they get what they need, but how can I do it so that I can grow, and what I know of them, that I can actually help them grow. Like if it's a fear that you can sense that's going on, how can I maybe see past what's irritating me, and how might I help them overcome that fear that's making them act that way? And that's soulmating as I see it.
It's beautiful. And I like it because I think this idea that there's just this one person out there for you can make people feel
Yeah,
like, oh, it puts too much pressure
it
versus like,
does.
who are you with? Yeah,
Yeah, and then you doubt, you start kind of skirting or distracting yourself from the work you really can do in the relationship, because you start doubting, is this the right person?
totally. And I learned the
Yeah.
hard way when I was very young that chemistry does not equal soulmate.
No, it does not.
But
It
that's
does
the part two,
not.
Rachel. I could talk to you all day.
Yes. I'd love to do a part
Congratulations.
two.
We
Yeah.
should. Congratulations, ladies. I want you to pick up a copy of A Soulful Marriage by Rachel Glick. Thank you for being here today. Where can I have people reach out to you, find the
Yeah.
book?
Yeah. The
Yeah,
book is comes out February 4th, and you can get it on Amazon or Barnes and Noble, or Walmart, I think too. Um, and on my website at drrachelglick.com, I have a section called book, and you can see all the different tabs for where you can get the book.
perfect. And I'll link all of those on the show notes, which is
Wonderful.
right on your podcast player, ladies. So you'll be able to find it really easily. And Rachel, I've loved being with you. What a pleasure connecting with
Oh,
you today. Such
such
a
a pleasure
pleasure.
for me too.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much for your time
Thank
and
you.
everything you
Really
shared.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye bye, everyone.